transmitiendo nuestra comunidad al mundo.
Our work is important and it impacts future generations. And when times get hard, we need to remember, si se puede, si se pudo, y si se podrá. And without further ado, I'd like to invite Dr. Arnold to come and say a few words.
Buenos días a todos. Gracias por su participación. I wanted to just quote James Madison, one of our very early presidents. He said, "Societies that honor those that toil the fields shall endure." I'm going to repeat that again. Societies that honor those that toil in the fields shall endure. This always worries me because when I think about how we do not honor our farm workers, I always worry that we'll be importing food like we do many other products because we've let down the people that put the food on our tables. So I just wanted to mention that. And this conference is about sharing and about honoring. We'll be hearing some stories. You know, Emma's going to be sharing her story. Hopefully others will as well. And we'll learn about the things that each of you are doing to honor farm workers, to make their lives and their jobs more productive. And the job training program is just one of those avenues. I'd like to say that, you know, we really feel at home here in this area. We've been here for 40 years. We have the, I think, one of the best state-of-the-art day treatment programs just down the road here in Avondale, where the development is stable. With Ed Pastor, we were able to establish the Lico Peña Charter High School, brought the microloan program, and we still serve some of the communities further out in Harquahala and those other areas of the farm community. So this is nuestra casa, so bienvenidos. Also, I was kind of interested when they came in and I saw the bus of Tortuga. And well, we even got a picture of it. So where did this bus come from? Well, many of you may or may not remember the Civil Rights Act of 1964 created the Johnson Kennedy War on Poverty. I was working for Head Start with Chuck Ford, and we had Marana, Uncle, and Sahuarita. We had to keep all the Head Starts filled up. And during that time, we wrote a grant to get $19,000 to buy. We didn't know a bus, but it was. We had an idea of having a school, so we didn't get the school, but we got the school bus. So what we did is we took the school bus and made it our school. So we started going down, and actually our first 6 years, almost 100% of our students were Bracero migrant workers. And it was very interesting, the kind of problems that they were facing during that period of time. But it was a very important part of our formative stage was going to and where the people were. I know Emma, your program has that philosophy, and many of you others that you're off, I know yours does. Whenever you go to where people are, things really happen. So those are things that are very important to us. So La Tortuga started in August 24th, 1967. Then there was Ruben Romero, that was the mayor of Tucson at the time, and he came out and got on the bus. And some of the other mentors we had down in that time, Hector Morales, and we had also Maria Quiles. She had been the principal at Pueblo High School, when my alma mater, and she were some of the people that really helped us. And a lot of people know that Pueblo Area Council was where our first grant came through there, still over where I believe your office is today still. And so that was kind of the roots for the bus. Also, I just wanted to say too that when you go to where people are, that's a sign of respect. When we drag people off to a meeting, to another place that's outside their safety zone, we find that we don't have that kind of contact that we really need to have with people. So today we're trying to talk a little bit about partnerships. I want to share something over in Yuma County that was actually seen by about 15 million people. It was an NBC special done by Telemundo and NBC to share the story of 4 Tech High School students, 2 graduates and 2 that were still in school. And I feel that this story, and I heard a lot from a lot of people around the country, that this opened the eyes of many people that we're really a nation that depends on people that work in the fields, and the groceries don't grow on the shelves of stores. So we're going to go ahead with that. We'll put down the lights. Carrie, could you help us with the lights or somebody back there, please?
Along the U.S.-Mexico border, in this sleepy farming community, Jimena and Leslie Aguilar have little time to rest.
I want to be a surgeon.
And what do you want to be when you grow
A
up?
pediatrician.
But at just 17 and 50 years old, they're not able to only focus on school. In collaboration with my colleague Nicole Suarez from Noticias Telemundo, we follow their daily struggle.
So you're the head of the family now.
Yeah.
What does that feel like?
Well, it feels normal, but at the same time, it's a big responsibility.
When their parents were deported to Mexico 2 years ago, the girls, both U.S. citizens, stayed behind. Now, the sisters attend school in person just 1 day a week and work full-time in these agricultural fields.
Tell me a little bit about what it's like to go out there day after day.
Well, it's really hot sometimes. I wanted just to leave everything there and leave, but I was like, no. I kept going.
Would it be easier for you to move back to Mexico with your parents?
To stay here so that my brothers can get education.
Do you think you're growing up too fast?
As night falls, their day begins. Jimena, what time did you get here?
I got here around 10:30,
10:30 at night.
Yes.
It's now almost 5 o'clock in the morning.
Yes.
Why have you been here so long?
We've been looking for a job. I have to go as bus by bus, van by van, till I get one.
Because they're in between crop seasons in Arizona, the jobs are scarce. But Jimena gets lucky. She's headed to a melon field where she'll work for the day. Not Leslie. So your sister Jimena just left on a bus. Now you're by yourself. Does that scare you?
Yes, because I don't know where she is going. I don't know who the people are, where they taking her.
The Aguilar sisters are only 2 of the estimated 400,000 to 500,000 migratory and seasonal child laborers in the United States. Agriculture is big business in Arizona, bringing in roughly $23 billion a year. But for these essential workers, it's barely enough to pay the bills. The Aguilar sisters work 8 hours a day, 5 days a week in the field to support their family.
The work is grueling, and each of them earn about $500 a week.
We put it together and then we say this is for the rent, this is for the food, this is for the gas, the light, and the water.
Our goal is to ensure that every migratory student earns a high school diploma or GED.
Laura Alvarez is the director of the Arizona Migrant Education Program.
And what's your name?
Working to get migratory children out of the fields
We are ready for...
and into the classroom, like many here at this elementary school in Yuma.
Many people across the country don't realize that there are so many children in this position, American citizens, that need this type of help.
In Arizona alone, we have over 10,000 students that we provide instructional support services for.
Without this program, what would happen to these children?
That's a thought I don't want to think about.
Eric De La Mantes and Luis Vargas both worked these fields throughout high school.
So I used to wake up at 2 a.m. to work over here the weekends, and it was very, very cold.
But now, with help from the Migrant Education Program, they are both about to graduate with a bachelor's degree. What message do you have for other young adolescents that might be going through the same situation?
Try their best. Just go forward.
For the Aguilar sisters, it's a situation they're trying to leave behind by graduating with with the help of the Migrant Education Program.
Do you want this work for your children?
No, I don't want this for my children. I want them to study and be somebody in life.
So every Sunday, on their one day off, when they cross the border into Mexico to visit their parents, they carry their homework and that hope for a better life.
And it is really incredible what these kids have to go through, and the pandemic has changed the routines for so many of them. The Aguilar sisters who you saw right there, they actually told us they got COVID-19 and are now recovering. Guys.
My goodness.
Oh, wow.
Thank you, Gabe, for that eye-opening report.
It's the thing, we don't think about where our food comes and who are the people who pick it,
Picturing
bring
a
it to
kid
us.
at 15 years
Yeah.
old.
Working 6 days a week.
And going to school.
Going to school.
Yeah.
Gabe, thank you.
Monica Castro-Berumen is the lead teacher at the PPEP Southern High School there in San Luis, and we're very proud to say that we just started the new campus there, and we hope to be done by school year next fall to have that. I did want to emphasize the partnerships that I think are very important. Here you see the Migrant Education Program, you see an educational institution, and you see a focus on what I think is the most important thing for us today is our youth. Our youth are in very much peril. We operate 6 public charter high schools, and we have also 9,500 students that study online through the Arizona Virtual Academy. I see in my own family, my 3 daughters struggled in school, and we want to see every opportunity, whether it's a youth build program that Jesse Lopez is running there, or the NFJP, or the work that Emma or any of the others are doing, and Ralph, that we're helping the young people. We've got to invest more time. We've got to find more scholarships for kids. When I was at I'm going to close with this, when I was at the San Luis graduation, it was very, me dio mucha pena because we were not able to give scholarships to everyone deserving. And as I looked out over the crowd there, I saw the parents and how much sacrifice they had done to get those kids to where they were. And some of those dreams were just going to stop there. So one of the things that we're working on very hard at PEP, and I hope that we can work together, is to raise more funds for scholarships to give opportunities for these young people, because they're our future. They are the people that we must invest our time in. So thank you for allowing me to share a few of these words with you. And by the way, the legacy of La Tortuga is really alive. Yesterday, when I got to the office, the daughter of Governor Durazo from Hermosillo was sitting on the bus with her family. And we have had Fernando Chavez. We've had people from all over the world that have come to see the bus. And why do they come? It's because it's a story of not one person, not one individual, but collectively people that have come together and are taking a journey together to try to make the lives of farm workers better. And as Brianna said, si se puede, si se pudo, y si se podrá. Thank you very much. It gives me great pleasure to introduce a friend, Raul Grijalva. Raul and I grew up just maybe less than a mile together. I was on Veterans in South 7th. He went to Sunnyside High School. I went to Pueblo High School. So just down the road there. Our lives have gone different ways, and I think, and looking at the accomplishments that Raul has done over the years, I think is very credible to the people that he serves. And it's a privilege to have him here today. And I don't want to take too much time in introduction, because by the way, all of you have on their table the bios of every single person speaking today. And so hope you'll take a moment to do that. Raul, please come and share some words with us.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, John. As always, thank you, my friend, and to Project PEP. I think the history of service and advocacy for our nation's essential workers, farm workers, has been not only preserved, but is ongoing. It's not a legacy, it's a real thing. And want to congratulate the organization, John, and all your fine staff. Ms. Felix, thank you very much for the invitation and your hospitality when we got lost. And, you know, I'm a first generation American with the pleasure and privilege of being born in this country. Very much so. I believe that deeply. And my dad came to this country as a bracero. No trabajar en el campo. Él le tocó hacer bracero en un rancho. You know, he's a cowboy. Ahí de Sonora, pues, de los buenos. And so he came over, and suddenly there was love, and suddenly there was a family. And I raised my first 5 years in the ranches that he was working at, Canoa Ranch between Nogales and Tucson. And that's my history, but that's not just mine. That's not just mine. This history of mine is replicated day in, day out, every day, the people you work with. And so where do you cap potential? Where do you say enough? And how do you nurture and seed this potential that is all to the benefit of this country of ours? How do you do that? I think we struggle with that constantly in this country of ours. But something very important happened to those that needed to see, and that was the pandemic. When suddenly that door opened up and many people realized who these essential workers were, who was putting food on the table, who was making sure it got delivered, who was still at the cash register at the Circle K, who was still doing all that, and who was out in the fields making sure that food at Food City, Albertsons, Safeway, etc., Fry's was there. Who was that? It was these families and that potential that was doing that. And they did that. They did that with not only the pandemic and the threat to life and health of everyone, and all of us experienced that. I can't think of any family that has not experienced that. And more importantly, I can't think of any family that knows of someone that they lost to this pandemic. I can't think of one. And I mention that because I think it's important to remember that the farm workers were working under that burden, plus the climate burden. And that all impacted not only their health and well-being, but the well-being of their families and themselves. And so, what do? Now that we have realized, belatedly or not, how essential these workers are to the future of America and to the ongoing sustainability of our country. And we're working on initiatives. Hopefully we're gonna see this one on the floor in the House in September. And that's the Fairness for Farm Workers Act. You wanna look it up, it's HR 3194. Real simple act. And we worked on it, myself and others, but this was an initiative that we felt very strongly about. And I was just mentioning to the judge that in the agricultural sector, when they set up the federal labor standards in 1938, they excluded children in the agricultural sector. They excluded minors. Everywhere else, child labor was prohibited. And kids and young people of a certain age were sent. School and those activities became a priority. This was made on the myth that, you needed those kids to come and help with the family farm. But we're not talking about the family farm here. We're talking about major agribusiness, major production in this country, needed for this nation. And so there's no excuse for child labor. So 3 things this bill corrects for the Fair Labor Standards Act. It corrects that. It mandates minimum wage. And the other thing that agricultural workers were prohibited from participating in, which every other worker does in this country, overtime. And we're saying the act should be equal to all workers. And now that we have realized the essential nature of this work that people took for granted, people diminished, and people diminished the people that worked in the fields, how essential they were to the life of this nation and to the fact that this nation could struggle through this pandemic knowing that their basic needs are going to be met, and one of them being nutrition, and who was making sure that that nutrition was at their door. The families, the children, and the workers that you work with day in, day out. That's who was doing that. And the other thing is the Valdiva Act. Gentlemen, heat collapses, ask the person, my dad, we got to call an ambulance. They said, no, put him in the car and take him somewhere. He dies in the car from heat exposure, okay? And so this act is aimed at that issue. And I'm glad that the Biden administration and the Department of, and OSHA and the Department of Labor have now have a national emphasis on that. That our bill didn't get past the Senate on this, but it is about heat exposure, heat danger, and mandating now inspections, assuring that there's hydration, water, shade, and breaks. That this is a work that nobody else understands. Whether you're inside a factory that's not air conditioning and you're processing produce, or whether you're out in the field, making sure that produce is gathered and ready for market. That's the exposure. And it's a public health issue. We've classified it as a public health issue, and wanting, again, equity. So the same protections on the work site that you give other workers in terms of heat exposure and attention and inspection and mandating that, is to take the laws that are on the books and the protections and regulations on the book and enforce them. And that's the bill, and that's what the National Emphasis Program, where now that is a priority for the Department of Labor and OSHA to do that. And I think I'm happy for that, because I think that it's short of a law. This is a very good step forward. And now, what do we do for farm workers going forward? One of the efforts that we're doing right now is trying to get some language to change the eligibility cutoff for farm workers in terms of migrant Head Start. So you could uncap that and allow more that qualify, but because of very archaic rules that Head Start has in terms of admission, and not taking into account the special circumstances situation for farm worker families and their children, we're saying change the eligibility there and let those kids, those new kids that qualify, into the program. And I think that'll be very significant to about 55,000 kids across this country that will automatically qualify into that program. One of the proudest things I did, I think my 3rd year in Congress, that we expanded and lifted the cap on migrant Head Start. But that cap is always there if you have eligibility that prevents people on language that fits perhaps in other circumstances, but does not fit the economic or family situation for migrant families. And so we hope that we get it into a bill that is coming up that's not related to this, but get the language in there, you know, and continue to press the Department of Education to do that themselves without requiring a law. That's where we're at. I think that's going to be an important one, because as John was saying, it is about the future. It's a generational issue that we're talking about here. And the biggest challenges facing this country are to those generations that aren't sitting in this room. They will have to confront these challenges. And let us at least set the table for them, if you pardon the expression, so that there were programs in place and there's attention in place so that those generations don't end up having to suffer more than any other. The other thing that we're working on, and we hope to have it on the floor in September, is a piece of legislation that I worked on, and my good friend, Mr. McEachin, Congressman McEachin from Maryland, is the Environmental Justice for All Act. What does this do for 140 million Americans? Those are both communities and workers. That it provides a process, a strong process, to protect these workers from toxic pollution and to protect these communities from that. They're overburdened already, and we're saying that you do a health assessment before you do anything, and these people have a redress. They can go to court if they feel their situation is not being taken care of. That's a piece of legislation, because if we're going to fight climate change, you can't leave the majority of the people behind. We're not going to solve the issue if overburdened communities become even more overburdened by climate change and the solutions that we bring to bear to that. So you got to keep everybody together on this. Otherwise, you're just replicating a system that is bound to overburden certain communities as it does presently. It's not an accident. The polluting industries across this nation and the use of chemicals and pesticides in food production are concentrated among certain groups of people across this country. It's racism, it's discrimination, and it is further marginalizing a group of workers and a group of communities that shouldn't be. So these backyard communities, frontline communities, and essential workers, we think this law begins to address their future more than anything else. And the other issue, particularly important to Arizona and parts of Central California, the Imperial Valley, is the issue of water and how that affects the people you work with and how that is going to be dealt with. I think food production being essential, the workers that are involved in food production being essential, if that's an essential need, we need to protect that need going forward. And we have to make some choices. And I think sometimes government, and particularly at state levels, are afraid to make choices and decisions. We cannot continue to do what we are doing in terms of water usage in the state of Arizona and pretend it's all going to get better in 5 years. It's going to get worse. And where will the pain be felt? Becomes the second question. Because intertwined in everything I'm telling you is about equity. Not anything special for farm workers and their families, just the same treatment, the same attention, the same resource intervention when these communities and these individuals need it. And, you know, good example, sweetheart deal to Saudi Arabian investors. So they could grow alfalfa to ship back to Saudi Arabia for the horses. They were exempted. They can pump as much groundwater and use as much water as they please without any restriction. Farming in Arizona, 15% cut on CAP and other uses based on the Colorado River and the drought and the falling water levels. And an additional 3 or 4% will come, this will be announced today, on top of the 15%. So I think that decision makers have to look at it as how do you balance this and how do you remove the abuse from water usage in this state of ours? And what are we planning for? To sustain the demand we have now or keep creating demand that we can't meet? And those are choices, they're political, but they're also survival choices. And I would hope that the leadership in this state gets very serious about that. And if it doesn't, then I think there has to be a national policy that begins to mandate. You have to do this in order to assure that consumers don't pay through the nose for their water and that essential production be maintained. Those are choices. And I think the American people would side with you and with me in saying that food production is an essential choice above others. And so those are the questions that I see. I've been giving, I've got 32 seconds here. I might extend myself just a little more. Workforce labor reform. An antiquated, cumbersome, difficult work visas for seasonal workers exist right now. We all know that. More problems and solutions involved in that process. And we're saying that given that, and the need that this nation has por un brazo laboral, somebody to do the work that we're talking about, then there has to be a reform to that. A reform that offers seasonal workers all the protections and rights that all workers have in this country, not less than. Not creating a second class of workers in this country. That is un-American. And we shouldn't tolerate it, whether they're seasonal or not. And the other thing is a path to permanent a path to legalization. That after a certain period of time, these seasonal workers begin to establish, and then they can go forward and begin the process of legalizing their status permanently in this country, both beginning with residency and going forward. And this is, you know, this whole thing was endorsed by the Chamber of Commerce, National Chamber of Commerce. It was endorsed by agribusiness and growers associations. It was endorsed by the United Farm Workers of this country. And it hasn't moved forward because of the ugliness and the hatred and the fear that the issue of immigration and the border is generated in this country. It's a political issue, and it's a very, very brutal wedge issue among people. And so the extremists, the opportunists on this issue to exploit it, not try to solve it, have prevented any real reform from being done in this area. Even though constituencies basic to them, Chamber of Commerce, grower and agribusiness, are pleading with them that this is a quality reform that advocates are also endorsing as well. That's how the politics of immigration are. Low-hanging fruit, DACA, which would help a lot of the students that you work with in your education. Why isn't it been codified into law? Deported veterans. The fairness issue I just told you about in terms of workers. I want to close, so don't, I mean, you keep telling me, but I'm ignoring this, okay? I keep not looking away, but it gets the sign higher and higher. Ya, hombre, me invitaron, es acabar. Pero there's challenges ahead. We were talking about a generation. The fact remains that there's really challenges ahead. Whether you're talking about climate, equity issues, beating back this divisiveness, and keeping the reality of what a diverse and vibrant nation we are, and what a diverse and vibrant people we are, and what we give to this nation, not take from. I think that's the fight. Because we have shared values. And that's why I'm hopeful, and that's why I'm optimistic, and that's why I talk about investment, and that's why I talk about the future. Our democracy, my ability to be able to get up here and state what I believe in, whether people appreciate it or not, that's my democracy. That's my personal freedom. If I'm a woman, I have my personal freedoms that have been taken away from me. That's our democracy, our voice, the ability to vote, the ability to elect people to represent your voice. And the rule of law. That regardless of who you are, you're not above that law. That's the challenge that we must win. And then we have our shared humanity. And I don't need to say any more about that. We share that. Regardless of our skin color, our zip code, our economics, our nationality, it's our humanity we share. And that's the shared value that we have. And then I think the shared value is the reality I spoke to you earlier. That we're a diverse, vibrant nation, and that we contribute. And that contribution is going to continue to keep this country great. And that generations coming up are going to grow on that greatness. So the challenges we face, some are daunting, some want to ignore them, some want to avoid them, some want to pretend they're not there, but they're there. And all of you know that, and particularly the young know that. And I think it's time that as we nurture and support our young, that we also stand up for them, for their future, and for what I think is essential, an essential American quality, hope. And an expectation that the future will be better than it was, that my kids and my grandkids will have a better future than me. And so we keep working at that. And what you're doing here today and your gathering is, I think, a little more significant and fundamental than just taking a break from work. It's about how do you craft the message? How do you explain to the people that don't know? How do you convince the people that don't understand? And how you can be advocates and effective opponents of those that want to keep us from realizing the future and the American dream. Thank you very much.
Señor congresista,
Dígame.
permiso para hablar. Quiero compartir una historia muy corta con usted.
Dígame.
Hace un tiempo, algunos años atrás, se acercó una mujer desesperada a la radio máxima con un sobre en la mano y una carta dentro. Y se metió a la cabina donde usted estaba hablando y se lo entregó y se tuvo que ir porque usted era ya una persona muy importante. En esa carta le explicaba que tenía 2 gemelas y que esas gemelas iban a ser deportadas porque querían mucho estudiar en la universidad. Y había orden de que si se inscribían en la universidad, los que no tenían papeles iban a ser deportados. Y esa señora le pidió que mantuviera a su familia unida, que no permitiera que la separaran en esa carta, porque ella solamente le entregó ese sobre Manuela. En 22 días la señora recibió su cita para hacerse ciudadana, para la cual estaba lista, y sus hijas recibieron la ciudadanía porque eran menores de edad. Gracias, Señor, porque usted es el líder que nos motiva a ser líderes. Esta muchachita, Maritza Lin, es mi hija. Esa muchachita, Melissa Gallegos, es mi hija. Priscila Ledesma, que va a recibir una condecoración, es una de las gemelas que usted salvó y que usted ahora son grandes líderes en esta comunidad, porque nos seguimos a usted y a personas como el doctor Ari. Muchas gracias, porque toda esta comunidad debe saber que usted hace esfuerzos que cambian vidas, pero que crecen grandes líderes. Gracias, porque yo soy esa mujer. Gracias.
I will now be presenting on NFJP. The National Farmworkers Jobs Program is very important to me, not just because I oversee it, but because of the fact that, Manuel, can you switch the slide a little bit? Thank you. Okay, because as you see in these photos here, I come from the farm work. My grandfather was illiterate and worked in the fields, and my grandmother challenged him to learn how to read and write. And once he learned how to read and write, then he was able to get a job that paid a little bit more, and we realized that education was the key to empowerment. By the time my mom was born, she learned these life lessons, and she was able to attain her master's degree and was an educator of 25 years. And I'm proud to say that I attended college because I followed the footsteps of my grandfather. And if I wasn't willing to get outside of my box, or if he wasn't, then I wouldn't be here today. So we can't really know where we're going if we don't know the history of our program. And I think that that's really important to be able to describe what NFJP is today. And I would like to invite Dr. Arnold to talk a little bit about the history of the National Farm Workers Jobs Program.
Raul was talking about different legislations. I remember the first time I came in contact with job training was MDTA, and then there was CETA, then there was JTPA, now there's WA, WIOA, all of this. You know, after a while, your head spins a little bit, but I think the underlying theme was to make the lives of farm workers more viable in training. I know things that we've done over the years, like truck driver training, getting people CDLs has been a huge benefit. Pesticide training the trainers. I know one time we did about 1,000 people across the state, and how important that was. And I think also Raul was alluding to that issue. And JTPA and all those programs back there, and the different secretaries of labor that we've gotten to know over the years, it's been, I think, very interesting, because the individuals that came in as secretaries of the Department of Labor really had no clue what farm workers were doing. And then there was an organization called the Association of Farm Worker Opportunity Programs, and that was organized as an advocacy group and still exists today. And they will be having their national meeting here, right in this facility, in another month from now. Carrie Hogan has been very much involved in the board on that particular program. So we're very excited about that advocacy group. And over the years, we wanted to make sure that we support organizations that are strong advocates for us. So I wanted to share a little bit about that. We started back in 1980, and there was a grant opportunity. And I want to thank Raul again. Thank you for your presence. And let's give him a big hand. I remember the opportunity that we saw when we first applied for the grant was in 1980. And I got on a plane, I think it was one of those red-eye specials, and I got into Washington, D.C. The grant was due at 5 o'clock. And I kept getting in these big traffic jams in D.C. And I think that the rush hour starts like at 2 o'clock, so we were stranded. And I got to Department of Labor at about 8 minutes to 5, and I didn't know what floor, and one of the people on the floor that had a big badge said, yeah, it's where you go. And I got there, and it was just 1 minute to 5, and actually there was a man coming out and locking the door of the Department of Labor office where the grant was supposed to be at 5. And I said, who are you? And he said, I'm Paul Mayran. I'm the director of the National Farm Worker Program. And he says, what do you want? I said, I want to give you something. And I gave him the grant proposal. And it was like right there. We were just within a minute of not having that opportunity, which would have meant we would not be here today. So there's a lot of little things that happen to you, the experiences with NFJP, and I know later on we're going to share some things that Emma has done with us with our NFJP and some of the partnerships we've had with her. But it's a very important organization, department. Each state has one. Carrie, I was just mentioning that we're going to have the AFOP conference. You want to say a word about that real quick? It's going to be here in September?
Yeah, September 19th through the 22nd. There will probably be about 400 people from across the nation. So there's 48 states and 53 organizations that do everything that we do here in the state of Arizona for farm workers across this awesome country. So we're very excited. We are helping to host this because we are the grantee of record for the state of Arizona. So very exciting times. So I don't know what all the registration is, but if you're interested, I'm attending, let me know, and I will pass it on to our executive director, Daniel Sheehan.
Thank you very much. So that's a little bit about Department of Labor, and there's been very good friends of ours over the years, and I want to recognize one person who's no longer with us. It's Senator Mike Enzi. You say, who is that? He's not our senator. Well, he's actually a senator from Wyoming. And Senator Enzi, one time I was at the office on a Saturday, and someone was knocking on the front door, and I went out there, and it was a fellow Rotarian by the name of Mike Enzi, and I didn't know he was senator at the time, but he came in, and he wanted to see the bus. So we went in La Tortuga, walked around, and we talked about the National Farm Worker Program. He said, well, you know, we don't have a lot of farm workers in Wyoming, but we do receive farm workers that come from you we are actually a home-based state. And so when I found out later, he's also chairman of the Senate Budget Committee, which is a nice person to know. And he became a great friend over the years and was a champion of our program and worked very hard to make sure that the farm worker program every year was funded and that it grew. And so I'm very unfortunately, just about 5 months ago, it's in the news that he had been in a bicycle accident and actually was killed. And so I just want to make mention to Senator Mike Enzi that was a farm worker friend, maybe not from the party that you would think he would be from, but he had the heart of the farm worker. And Carrie and I had a number of opportunities of working with him. So, and Raul Grijalva certainly has been a great advocate, and we've had others down the road that have always shepherded this small little program that nobody thought was important, but as Raul said today, without having farm workers that are trained, that know what they're doing when they're mixing pesticides or when they're driving big trucks, It's these kind of programs that ensure that they have the capabilities that they do. They give us the best agricultural program in the world. And also, we must never forget the braceros. How many of you in your family had gente que eran braceros? Okay. And who would like to say what a bracero is? Someone in your family that told you what the bracero movement, anybody like to say something? Well, I can tell you, I had a bus full of them every night. So I can tell you, these people built the best and most productive agricultural system the world has ever known. And if you come to our Hall of Fame in Tucson, the Smithsonian has given us 6 posters showing the history from 1942 to 1964. And you see the people in long lines coming up to some little ranchito in Sonora or Chihuahua or por allá, no? And then the next poster, you see them being sprayed like cattle. Then the next poster, you see where they live. And the next poster, you see they're using el mano del diablo, which is the short-handled hoe. And it's a very interesting snapshot of what these people went through to give us what we have today. Trust me, during the Depression, the Dust Bowl in the Midwest, this country was on the verge of starvation. And these people were brought in and really turned around our whole agricultural system. Yes, there were great scientists involved, great environmentalists, but the people that did the work and continue to do the work are the farm workers. So the job training program is the one that works with them to build their skill sets, build their confidence, and build their, what Cesar Chavez always taught us was to not only si se puede, but si se pudo and si se podrá. In 1978, I was in La Paz, California, and we were putting on a solar collector for Cesar Chavez for his solar collector for La Lavanderia. They wanted to go modern. In those days, solar was a new thing. So once we finished, I remember we went to dinner with the staff there at the United Farm Worker, and I had a little slide projector and I was showing about the bus and everything else. And after that, Cesar said, would you help us be part of the dream of La Tortuga? We want to establish a social service arm here. And so we spent several months working with different people and training them. And it was amazing to see how important that step to that union was when they brought the services and brought the training to the people. And they were always a supporter of NFJP as well. So there's friends, there's stories, there's many things that we could say today, but thank you all the staff that are here today. Many of you came from the fields. You know what it's like to be in the farms. You know what it is to be in the heat and be always wondering if you're going to make it through the day because of what Raul said about dehydration. We believe that this is one of the things that we've got to teach, and I'm sure Emma would agree, we've got to teach our farm workers to survive in the fields, especially in some of the climates that we have to deal with. But dehydration is a big killer. And the thing is, it's so silent, it overcomes you. And as Raul said, his own father was a victim of this. So I hope that some of these little nuggets of information we take back with us and we begin to address. So that's a little bit about it. But once again, let's have our farm worker staff and FJP staff please stand one more time. Thank you. And you also, in your brochure, you have a little photo album that we put in there, and it's kind of like here and now and then. We're going to be hearing some of the stories later on. Emma's going to tell her story. Some of the stories are in that photo album. And that has a lot of pictures. Pictures are 1,000 words, and so I want to leave that with you.
Thank you, Dr. Arnold. So as Dr. Arnold was saying, NFJP is an employment and training program, and our mission is to help farm workers attain a better quality of life. We offer career services, ongoing case management, follow-up services, and supportive services while our farm workers are going through our program. I think it's very important, like Dr. Arnold said, that we go out to the fields and we make sure that people know about our program, because a lot of people don't know about it, unfortunately, and it's why it's so essential that we're out in the fields and letting them know what services are available to them to get them out of the fields and into a better high-paying job. So this is pictured of Dia de los Campesinos, and this is out of Yuma, and we work with Campesinos Sin Fronteras, which does an amazing job. And it's giving back to the farm workers who put food on our table. So we all come together as a community to give back to the farm workers who do so much for us. We've also been working with migrant education to get out to reach more farm workers throughout the state. Recently, we went to Kingman. We had a very nice time with the Migrant Seasonal Farm Worker team and migrant education. Pilar, your team is amazing. Where are you? And we canvassed the whole area for about 3 days, and we had a great time. Good. So NFJP for me is very important, because when we see the successes, it empowers me to want to do more. And I'm sure it does that for my staff, because when we see you successfully complete the program, we are so excited. This is one of our success stories. Stephanie completed her CNA training and is now placed in a higher paying job. She's a dependent of a farm worker. So the ongoing message throughout this conference is that we need to be better, because we impact the next generation. Thank you. Dr. Arnold.
Thank you, Brianna. Our next speaker is Emma Torres. I was trying to think today when was the first time I met you and how long ago that's been. But all I can say is, whatever that was until now, it's been a great relationship.
Transmitiendo nuestra comunidad al mundo.